is to assist shearing contractors and promotes and advocates for the industry. Valerie's got more than 30 years in media, digital strategies, marketing, strategic consulting and industry advocacy, and interestingly is co-owner of pioneering e-business Pretzel Logic, for which she won Telstra Businesswoman of the Year award and has worked strategically with hundreds of large organisations and government agencies. And she's going to talk to us about making the wool harvesting workplace safer for all. Thank you very much, Valerie.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak today about an often overlooked but very important part of farming operations, the shearing shed. We get to, as an industry, work with helping wool growers produce the most amazing product, putting a plug in for our amazing wool product that we bring out of Western Australia, but we often do it in very difficult working conditions. So I'd like to talk to you today about a program that we've put together, which is Safe Sheds. So shearing, for those who are not familiar, shed handling and wool handling are very physically demanding occupations, with teams working 4 2-hour shifts a day or runs a day. They're working with unpredictable livestock, with shearing, wool pressing and grinding machinery and equipment. That alone creates inherent and obvious risks. A full working shed, for those who have been in them, is an amazing sight, with shearers, rousies, wool handlers and pressers all working at pace. However, when you add to that the often ageing, poorly maintained, sometimes dangerous, often dangerous, shearing shed infrastructure and equipment, we increase those preventable risks by a magnitude, and it is having a serious effect on the industry. We ran a survey amongst both wool growers and those that work in shearing sheds to ask them about shearing shed conditions, and the responses were concerning. Now, this isn't to say that improvements are not being made, and we do see growers building amazing new sheds, and we thank them very much for their ongoing commitment to the industry by doing so. Or making major renovations to sheds, or even incremental improvements to shearing sheds to ensure that we're providing a safe workplace to meet best practice standards. But too often we hear growers saying, I can't justify making those improvements when my shearing shed only gets used for 1 week a year. The problem is that our teams go into that shed for a week, and another shed for a week, and another shed for the week, and they spend their whole working year, or not a year, but maybe 9 months of the year, in those conditions. Also, we have responsibilities regardless of whether people are spending 1 day, 1 week, or 3 weeks, or 6 weeks, however long the shearing takes, to provide a safe, suitable working condition. The impacts we're seeing to industry is lost productivity. The issues are injuries, off time, off work, and often people who are then leaving the industry because of repetitive strain issues. So sometimes these are not just injuries that happen because of a catastrophic event, but repetitive strain over time. So if the shearing board and the gear is not set up in the right place, the strain over time that happens, if anyone's been out and seen what these people do, I won't say guys because there's plenty of girls shearing now, it's physically demanding and they're athletes, but it's a repetitive, and there are ways to try and make this better for them. The major cost for a shearing contractor is workers' compensation. So I've been digging around to find some information because sometimes we need to frame this conversation in economic terms, not just, I don't say just in terms of injuries. So workers' compensation premiums, so those who are not aware, shearing contractors are responsible most of the time for bringing the team in for the wool grower. They employ and they have the payroll. So if we have a look at, this is from WorkCover. WorkCover create the gazettal rate, which is the baseline rate for workers' compensation within a particular industry. So we have oil and gas production at 0.25%. Shearing services, when I looked, out of 513 categories that WorkCover have, shearing services is the third highest gazettal premium out of 513 categories. And that is of all industries across the state. The only two that were higher than shearing was justice, which I assume is prisons, and horse racing. Now, that's just the start of the story. The recommended premium for shearing is 6.89%, but that's just the baseline, and it goes up from there based on claims history. So contractors who have had claims from workers, now we have at the average shearing, the second one there, 21 to 24. As an industry, we have a fund that most of the shearing contractors are in. The current rate average is about 10.6. We have one contractor who is currently on 28%. So he's paying 28% of his full payroll is going to workers' compensation. Now, where does that go? Ultimately is passed on as a cost of business to the wool grower, because where else is it going to go? So that is a direct cost impact back to the wool grower. So we're all in this together as the shearing industry and growers, which is that this is unsustainable. We've seen some contractors closing their business because they simply cannot pass those costs on and their premiums have got too high. So improved work conditions and standards is critical to see a decrease not only in injuries, but in workers' compensation and cost of shearing. We also have staff attraction and retention. So the corresponding issue for growers may not be the next couple of years. For those of us who know what's happening in the industry at the moment, we are seeing, unfortunately, a decrease in flock for certain circumstances. But there's been an issue around staff attraction and retention. If we don't get enough people wanting to work in the industry, then growers are not being able to get shearing teams come out, and that's an animal welfare issue, as well as obviously an economic impact to the output of their farming operations. So it's very important that we provide good working conditions because we're competing with lots of other industries, and we need young people to be seeing this as a good industry to come into. As part of that, our industry has, for the last couple of years, brought in a program of recognising shearing and wool handling ambassadors, young people that are working as ambassadors to spread the word to other young people about the benefits of working within this industry. And we've put an emphasis on increased training and programs to the wool harvesting industry, which AWI, Australian Wool Innovation, funds here in Western Australia, lots of programs and the ambassadors. So we're trying to bring new people in, but there's no point training people if then their experiences when they go and work out in the shearing shed is disgusting toilets, if they get toilets at all, rotting floorboards, really poor conditions to work in, then they head straight back out of the industry. So for the viability for all of us, it's important that we all work together. So that, as background, leads us to why we then worked on this Safe Sheds program. So this was something that we did in conjunction again with Australian Wool Innovation, and we thank them for that, and that is obviously funded by wool grower levies to then create this Safe Sheds program. So this was done in 2020. It's a best practice guide to making the wool harvesting workplace safer for all. I have some copies here with me today, so if anybody wants them, please come and see me, and we can get you one. So the objectives for this program was to ensure that both contractors and growers understood their duty of care obligations. For too long, I think, because this has been a contracting situation where shearing contractors bring the team in, often wool growers felt that, oh, well, that's not, I'm not the employer, therefore it's not my obligation. The fact is it's your work site. So there is, with the changes that have been made, and I think a lot more understanding now about, person conducting the business undertaking, it is a shared responsibility. It's a shared responsibility for the grower, the contractor, and the people working in the team to notice issues and to raise them. We all have a role to play within the safety within the shearing shed. So it was around showing this shared responsibility, but then providing the tool. It's not enough to just say, well, it needs to be better. We wanted to work together to say, this is how it can be improved. This is what we're looking for as an industry. These are the things to look for. We wanted to provide that information in an easy to use format so that we could improve as an industry. So the guide, which I've just shown you, has 5 sections. It's available for download. QR code there. You can download a PDF of it and the checklists that go with it, or you can also order hard copies from AWI. So the guide is split into a number of different modules. We have the shearing shed itself, so the infrastructure of the shed, whether that's looking at the raised boards, the floorboards, even simple things like the number of railings we see with finger traps because they haven't been plugged on the end that literally result in broken fingers in finger traps. We've had one contractor where one of his wool handlers went through a rotting floorboard up to her hip. She's been on workers' compensation for 2 years. So there are a number, even people, they then put tin down to just plug up a hole. When you've seen how quickly people are running around within a shearing shed, that's a trip hazard. So, there's a lot of things within the structure of the shed, and given a lot of these sheds are well over 50 years old, these are things to look at. Even things like someone said, oh, I've replaced all the skylights and put good skylights in so that provides better lighting. And we say, we don't like skylights within a shearing shed because if you're working at a wool table all day, right underneath that skylight, you're cooking. People literally burn. So some of these, in the book, people think they're doing the right thing, but this is the way that we can work together on making improvements. Secondly, machinery and equipment, and thank you for bringing up already. We've had about the wool press. We've got wool press, shearing gear, grinders, these are the old overhead gear. Unfortunately in WA, in some states these are illegal. In WA they are not illegal. Which makes it difficult when I have growers ring and say, do I really need to put in all of the new stuff and can't we use this? What we say is, well, if you want shearing teams to come and work out at your shed, then yes, you do need to replace it. There's someone showing that he could even get his hand there. There was an instance in the eastern states about 2 years ago where a young girl was working in the shed. She got in to jump onto a wool bale, which was placed near the overhead gear. She had a ponytail and she was scalped. So there is no need for these anymore. So we have, the anti-lock-up equipment, the, Heineguri Evos. A lot of shearing teams will bring their own and hook them up. The issue there is then making sure that sometimes they can't put them in exactly where they need to go if that gear is still in place. Wool press, there was an instance 3 years ago, I think, of a tragic death in wool press, and this was a person who had worked in the industry for over 40 years, was as experienced as they came. And so I'm not going to go into the details of it, but again, a preventable death. Another just story with a wool press. Interestingly, we were at a lovely brand new shed a couple of weeks ago that had been opened for everyone to come in and see, and it had been designed really well and was great. And one of the contractors said, "This is fantastic, but I wouldn't allow my team to work in here." They'd done everything great to the shed and then had an exceedingly old wool press with no guards on it. So they'd probably spent $500,000 on the shed with then the old wool press in there. So very important. We then look at amenities and facilities, eating areas, food preparation, water, and don't even get me started on toilets. This is a workplace, people. And it's, it's pretty awful, some of the things that we've seen. And yes, women work in sheds, and we need to have certain things for women as well. So we work through that as well. Work practices, presentation of sheep, penning, ram sedation, time off food and water, making sure that you're agreeing with the contractor around those work practices, and then general working conditions, heat, cold. We always get a laugh when we go through the section on noise, because as most growers will tell you, the worst noise comes from the speakers of the shearing team playing their music. We then have all of that information also available as checklists that have been put together to use at different times of the shearing season. So we suggest that a full assessment be done once a year, preferably by a grower with their contractor together, because the contractor will know from their team about working in the shed and the things that they've seen and that they've picked up. We do come and help people if requested. We don't say we do assessments or reviews. We will assist a grower do their own, because we're not in a formal situation. And it generally takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Then we suggest a review of everything to give enough time for any fixes that need to be done before shearing. An induction checklist for the team itself, and then post-shearing, which the team can then assist with of anything they've noticed, anything that's broken during shearing that then can get fixed for next year. And I would say to any growers that probably the number one psychological impact for teams coming in is if they come in next year and the same things have been broken from the previous year, or the pen gates are still hanging off the hook as they were last year, then that's sort of a bit of an indication, and teams will think you don't care about what we're doing here. And that flows through to their own attitudes and work. Whereas if they come in and go, "Oh, toilets have been fixed up, things that were broken have been fixed up," we can see incremental improvements each year. That makes a real change to attitudes, I think, and we know that things have been tricky for the last few years, often in relationships between growers and teams. This was all also created, we teamed up with Safety Culture, and this has also been created as an app that you can go around with your iPad, phone, take photos, work your way through all of the questions, make notes for yourself, actions and so on. This is a system we're continuously improving, so to make that easy for people. And as we know, it's better if anything is ever investigated, then you've got a good full record, which is often easier to find than that piece of paper that got put back into the office somewhere, and goodness knows where that may end up by the time you need it. We do assist grower groups. We do a lot of work out with grower groups, presentations. We worked, for example, with A Sheep and Beef out of Esperance, where we went around for a week and we assisted 22 growers in reviewing their shearing sheds. And when the training teams went in the next year, they said they could see which of those sheds we'd been through and the improvements that they'd made, which was great. And one of them has since gone and made a significant effort to rebuild one of the sheds that was more of an issue. So we do come in and assist, and as I say, sometimes it's not necessarily big things, but it's even where possibly where you can see here they're pointing to this was a new shed. Everyone thought they were doing the right thing, but consistently where the gear had been put was actually in the wrong place. It was slightly off kilter in terms of where they're dragging coming to the point of shearing and then back down the chute, there would be too much twisting happening. So, you know, we can sometimes help with growers in picking up those types of things, and that's us doing an audit there, or not an audit, an assisted review, where we've got the contractors there, the growers there, and everyone's working through the shed together. So this has been a very big project for us. It's long-term and ongoing. I would like to acknowledge the ongoing support we've had from WorkSafe, and particularly Julie Gaunt, who I know has personally handed out many, many box loads of books, so thank you for that, Julie. You know, spreading the word, getting the message out there and making those improvements. And we encourage everyone that's been involved in wool harvesting or has clients in wool harvesting to get on board. Also, just a plug for anybody who's interested in seeing Australia's best shearing in action this weekend. The national championships are on in Katanning, and people are coming from all over the country Saturday and Sunday for sports shears if you want to go and see the best in action. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and a very comprehensive presentation, because I have no questions here. So thank you very much.